When I first interviewed you, there was talk of Bashar al-Assad. He's the hope. He's the reformer. That's not what they say anymore.
Who?
People who write about you, people who talk about you, people who analyze Syria and your regime.
Exactly. So the hope for American is different from the hope of Syrian. For me, I should be the hope of the Syrian, not any other one, not American, neither American, neither French, or anyone in the world. I'm president to help Syrian people. So this question should start from the hope of the Syrian people. And if there's any change regarding that hope, we should ask the Syrian people, not anyone else in the world.
But now they say, their words, a butcher. Comparisons to the worst dictators ever to walk on the face of the earth, comparing you to them. Using weapons that go beyond warfare. Everything they could say bad about a dictator, they're now saying about you.
First of all, when you have a doctor who cut the leg to prevent the patient from the gangrene, if you have to, we don't call him butcher, we call him a doctor. And we thank him for saving the lives. When you have terrorism, you have war. When you have war, you always have innocent lives that could be the victim of any war.
What was the reality on August 21st? What happened in your judgment?
We're not in the area where the alleged chemical attack was happened, as it alleged. We're not sure that anything happened.
Even at this date, you are not sure that chemical weapons, even though you have seen the videotape, even though you've seen the bodies, even though your own officials have been there.
I haven't finished. Our soldiers in another area were attacked chemically. Our soldiers. They went to the hospital as casualties because of chemical weapons. But in the area where they said the government used chemical weapons, we only had video and we only have pictures and allegations. We're not there. Our forces, our police, our institutions don't exist. How can you talk about what happened if you don't have evidences? We're not like the American administration. We're not social media administration or government. We are the government that deal with reality. Well, when we have evidences, we will announce.
Well, as you know, Secretary Kerry has said there is evidence that they saw rockets that fired from a region controlled by your forces into a region controlled by the rebels. They have evidence from satellite photographs of that. They have evidence of a message that was intercepted about chemical weapons, and that soon thereafter there were other intercepted messages. So Secretary Kerry has presented what he concludes is conclusive evidence.
No, he presented his confidence and he presented his convictions. It's not about confidence, it's about evidence. The Russians have completely opposite evidence that the missiles were thrown from area where the rebels control. That reminds me about what Kerry said, about the big lie that Colin Powell said in front of the world on satellites about the WMD in Iraq before going to war. When he said, this is our evidence, actually he gave false evidence. In this case, Kerry didn't even present any evidence. He talked, we have evidence, and he didn't present anything. Not yet, nothing so far.
Well, the United...
not single shred of evidence.
Do you expect an airstrike?
As long as the United States doesn't obey the international law and trample over the Charter of the United Nations, we have to worry that any administration, not only this one, would do anything. But according to the lies that we've been hearing for the last 2 weeks from high-ranking officials in this administration, we have to expect the worst.
Are you prepared?
We've been living in difficult circumstances for the last 2.5 years, and we prepare ourselves for every possibility. But that doesn't mean if you're prepared, things would be better. It's going to get worse with any foolish strike or stupid war.
What do you mean worse?
Worse because of the repercussions, because nobody can tell what the repercussion of the first strike, or you're talking about one region, bigger region. It's not only about Syria, it's interlinked region, it's intermingled, interlocked, whatever you want to call it. If you strike somewhere, you have to expect the repercussions somewhere else in different forms, in a way that you don't expect.
Are you suggesting that if in fact there's a strike, there would be repercussions against the United States from your friends in other countries like Iran or Hezbollah or others?
Yeah, as I said, it may take different forms, direct and indirect. Direct when people want to retaliate, or governments. Indirect when you're going to have instability and the spread of terrorism all over the region that will influence the West directly.
Have you had conversations with Russia, with Iran, with Hezbollah about how to retaliate?
We don't discuss this issue as a government, but we discuss the repercussions, which is more important because sometimes repercussions could be more destroying than the strike itself. Any American strike will not destroy as much as the terrorist has destroyed in Syria. So sometimes the repercussions could be many doubles the strike itself.
But some have suggested that it might tip the balance in the favor of the rebels and lead to the overthrow of your government.
Exactly. Any strike will be as direct support to Al-Qaeda offshoot that's called Al-Nusra, Jabhat al-Nusra, and the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. You're right about this. It's going to be direct support.
This is about chemical warfare, and let's talk about that. Do you approve of the use of chemical warfare?
What do you mean?
The use of chemicals, deadly chemicals?
Do I think that we have to use?
No, do you think that it is an appropriate tool of war to use chemicals?
The chemical?
Yes.
We are against any WMD, any weapons of mass destruction, whether chemical or nuclear. And
so you're against the use of chemical warfare?
Yeah, it's not only me. As a state, as a government, in 2001, we proposed to the United Nations a proposal to empty or to get rid of every WMD in the Middle East. And the United States stood against that proposal. So this is our conviction and policy.
But you're not a signatory to the chemical warfare
Not yet.
agreement. Why not?
Because Israel has WMD and it has to sign, and Israel occupying our land. So that's why we talked about Middle East, not Syria, not Israel. It should be comprehensive.
Do you consider chemical warfare equivalent to nuclear warfare?
I don't know. We haven't tried either.
Yeah, but you know, you're a head of state and you understand the consequences of weapons that don't discriminate.
Technically,
that
they're
are
not
beyond.
Yeah, technically they're not the same, but morally it's the same.
Morally, they're the same.
They have the same, but at the end, killing is killing.